Good morning. Welcome to the Celtic Way Morning Briefing Live. I'm Tony Haggerty, Haggerty10, and I'm joined today by Sean Martin and Alison McConnell. Sean Martin at Sean Martin TCW. Alison, how are you? How was your weekend? All good?
Very good, thanks. Nice to see some sunshine.
Sean, yourself? All good?
I thoroughly enjoyed it. Aye, good weekend. Yourself?
Yes, busy, but there you go. We'll contain our excitement because it's still a wee while away, but we're building the countdown to Rangers Celtic, Sunday, April the 3rd. Wonderful. And today we've got a treat for them, Sean, haven't we?
Yes.
Today we've got a treat for the viewers and listeners and subscribers. And as you can see from the bottom, if you want to subscribe to the Celtic Way, www.celticway.co.uk/subscribe. That's the housekeeping out the road, Sean. Love the job. Hit the button. You know what to do, guys. You can see videos of ourselves every day and some wonderful contributors, columnists, and some wonderful stuff on the website. Now, Sean, speaking of the website, ourselves, Alison, myself, yourself, when we watch Celtic games, we do extended man-by-man ratings. And this is where you come into your own, Sean. You compile these ratings as you have done all season, and they've come to be known as the Celtic Way Power Rankings. And you're going to publish the latest table on the Celtic Way Power Rankings. As you say, it's not scientific, it's just the man-by-man ratings compiled by the three of us as we watch Celtic games throughout the season. And a couple of surprises in there, Sean, and I'll throw the stage to Sean and say, take it away, Sean.
I don't know if it's not scientific. I had to do at least two sums to get them. So, no, it's as you said, it's your detailed player ratings, but I've kept a massive spreadsheet all season long. I've not updated these since November. So you think how many matches? It's actually been 27 matches that have elapsed since the last time we updated it. So a lot's changed. There's been all the new signings. There's been all of that. So it's on the website for like the full explanations and stuff, which I'd urge you to go on and read because I've done it all. So it would benefit me as well if you go on and click on it. The previous entries are on there as well. But it's basically, there's actually 24 players included, but I'll put up the top 20 in a minute. But you've got to have played 10% of all available minutes to actually get included at all. So that's 468 minutes and you're in, which isn't actually that much when you think on it. But you've got like Scott Bain doesn't make it, even though he's been in 51 of Celtic's 52 match day squads because he's just not played that much. You've got all the other people that don't play, Barkas, Urigide, ones that are out on loan, all that kind of thing. None of them are included. So you've got 24. I'll give you the 4 that aren't in it as I put up the top 20. Thank God that worked there. So the 4 that don't appear on that top 20 for no other reason than I had made the template with 20 was Mikey Johnston at 24th, Albion Ayeti 23rd, Ismail Asoro 22nd, and then probably quite harshly near Beaton at 21st. But I would caveat that by saying that he's actually increased his average rating, but it was probably because of all the new signings coming in and doing quite well. It's pushed them down a wee bit rather than up. But that's the top 20 there. You start with Liam Scales. But I think the first one we've got to come to there is Leo Labada. How is that guy 19th is what I think people will probably ask when they read it. He was 14th the last time. He's actually increased his average rating, but he's fell to 19th. So basically, what do you think about your season so far? Is there any reason you can see why he'd be so low, or is it simply that we just collectively don't know what we're talking about?
I think there's an element of that. I think in some ways, I think it's quite a harsh way to rate players and rate the contribution. I know why you get there. But I think if you to look at Leo Labada, a very young player coming into a new culture, I think his return is excellent in terms of goals and in terms of assists. I think he's played a fairly significant role this season for Ange Postecoglou's side, particularly in the opening months of the campaign. I thought he made a very immediate contribution. Had it not been for how Kyogo Furuhashi had started, I think Abada might have had more headlines. I think there's maybe been an inevitable dip at points in the season when you consider he was 19 and going on 20. But I think he looks like a very exciting prospect for Celtic, and I think he could be very satisfied with his contribution to date.
Tony?
I agree with that wholeheartedly. It is the stick out, isn't it? On that chart that he's 19th. But I guess that's down to what the eye test, what you're seeing in his contribution he's made, as Alison says, a valid contribution in certain games. Other games, maybe not so much, and that's clearly been evidenced by the ratings we've given him in certain matches as opposed to others.
What I would point out is that he's actually rated a 4 or 5 out of 10 pretty much as often as he's got a 7 or an 8, despite the fact he's got 14 goals and 9 assists. And I think that probably speaks to the inconsistency more than anything else. But I think what I says about Beaton probably applies to him as well, because all these newcomers coming in and playing well, but probably crucially have played less often. Abada's pretty much played consistently the whole time, which has given him more time to also not play well, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably that rather than any fault of his own. It's just kind of came together and pushed him down the rankings a wee bit. Is anybody surprised that Forrest sat low still? I mean, he was, I think he was like 9th or something the last time, but he missed a lot of football. Only has come back into it really in the last few weeks. I mean, as Postecoglou says, he's still got it. I still think he's got it at least for a once a week maybe contributor, if not 3 times a week. But were you expecting him to be so low as well, or is it simply another kind of case of newcomers pushing people down?
Yeah, I think it's been a really difficult season for James Forrest again, just in terms of trying to get fit and get back into the team. And you were actually just seeing a glimpse of him coming back to his best, and then he picked up another knock just recently. So I think it's been a fairly staccato 18 months for him. I'm not sure he's quite entirely found his rhythm since then. I would agree with you, Sean. You know, I think James Forrest is a kind of unsung hero at times in the Celtic sport. I think he offers far more than he gets credit for. I think it's far too early to write him off. I would agree his injury situation and the age he's getting to, he might not be playing the 60 odd games a season that he did consistently over a period for 3 or 4 years. Him and Callum McGregor were really at the top of the appearance charts. In fact, I think James Forrest at one point had played more games than any other European player in recent seasons. So he played an awful lot of football. He maybe can't sustain that level of minutes, but I think he definitely still has something to offer. I'm not overly surprised at where he is just now in the table, given the fact he's not featured so readily, but I would still think that James Forrest has plenty to offer to Celtic.
You think, when I looked at the kind of, you know, I like to say rather than just the matches, I like to look at the actual minutes that they've played and put that in equivalent. So he's played the minutes equivalent of just less than 18 matches, and he's got 4 goals and 4 assists, which is, I mean, it's all right, it's fine. But some of the goals and assists in those 8 contributions are actually really key. You think he scored the goal that sent Celtic to the League Cup final. He set Giacomakis up for the winner at Tynecastle. He scored at Almondvale as Celtic finally won there. So I think that there's scope, as long as he stays fit, that he does rise up these rankings again with the game time that he gets, because when he does get it, he does do things, is what I would contend. This is one I think I was like, how has he got there? I don't disagree, to be honest. I don't disagree.
Really.
What I would say is that part of the thing is, if you only come on for 2-3 minute cameos and therefore only get a mark of 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever, it's wiped. It doesn't get considered. So basically, it doesn't seem fair. It just totally pulls down people's rankings. And by and large, when McCarthy started, he's actually done all right, which explains why he's kind of stayed at that kind of level, even though others have dropped. The thing I would agree with is he's not done much to move either way. His game time's not increased in any meaningful way since the last update, which has actually benefited him rather than hindered him. When you look at the likes of Abada, who has played all the time, but as I say, has had more opportunity to not play well, then it's almost benefited McCarthy that he's not played. Any thoughts on McCarthy's season, or is it simply just more of the same from what it was in the last update?
It's more of the same, isn't it, really? I mean, he hasn't really featured enough, you know, so it is, you kind of rub your eyes in disbelief that McCarthy's above Abada in those power rankings, really, don't you? You just, it's as I say, that's the one that leaps out at you. But as we say, it's the eye test, really, that you're watching these games and you're giving players ratings, and that's the collated, that's what the evidence is telling you. So, as you say, it's not, it's it's from the Celtic Way guys that are doing it, so it's not.
I mean, it's not a scientific in the sense that this is the underlying stats. But it is literally our collated, detailed man-by-man ratings from every game. It's not like we've just plucked it out of thin air and says, "Oh, this is the ranking as we speak." This is just where they come out. But bottom half is probably more controversial than the top half. I think we can all agree. But I mean, David Turnbull's there, 15th. He's been out injured. I think that was always going to happen. Dies in Maida. He's a new entry. 14th. I think it's probably fair enough. Couple of games where it was more effort than production. Couple of really good games. The last game in particular, I thought he was magnificent. I'd done a kind of detailed breakdown of his game for that. You've got 13th. You've got to mention him, Georgios Giacomakis. I think the last time I've put this in the kind of summary of his position at the last rankings, he just qualified because he'd just played enough minutes, and he was 20th. With an average rating of 5.3. His average rating has now gone up to 6.4. That's quite a jump. And I wrote at the time, I think it was me that done his profile at the time, that his physicality and his kind of penchant for buying fouls have proved a useful tool in Europe. But more will be expected given his goal scoring record in the Eredivisie. And since then, I mean, what can you say apart from he's been clinical? He's got 12 goals, all one-touch finishes, all that kind of thing. You know it all. We've talked about it at length the last couple of weeks. And the best way for me to put it, I'm sure you will agree, is that if Celtic do go on to lift this league title, he's going to have been as crucial to it as anyone.
Yeah, I think his return since the resumption of games on the winter break has been excellent. I'm not sure you could really quibble with it. I think 11 of the 12 goals have all come from there. I think he's looked a very different kind of striker than what's at the club already. I think, he gets into the 6-yard box and these one-touch finishes. He's very good at just getting across people. I'm not sure he's quite the big physical striker that his appearance would suggest. I think it's a kind of different way that he plays, but yeah, I think he'll be very pleased. And I think crucially what it does as a striker when you have a return like that is all of a sudden there's a level of confidence. When you have that assurance, you've got a belief about yourself, and I think it's critical for a striker to have that going onto the pitch. I think there's just a feeling that if he's in and around the 6-yard box, he's backing himself to score.
Keep your comments coming in, guys. We're about to get Pete McGee. We're about to get Starfelt. Don't worry about that. But first of all, a word for Tom Rogic, Tony. It's actually a rise of one place for him, but people might still think it's a bit low.
Yeah, but we spoke off air before we came on, and Tom Rogic's been absolutely outstanding in matches, and then he's been absolutely anonymous in others, hasn't he? I guess that will be where the anomaly comes from and why he's maybe so low down the charts. You can pick off the great games that you've watched Rogic play, but I think you said, what was his average? He's averaged 4 and 5s and 6s, 7 and 8s.
There's only 3 players in the whole squad that have managed to get a 9 out of 10 rating more than once, and Rogic is one. Kyogo and Giacomakis are the other 2, but Rogic is one of them. And I just found this interesting, and it probably speaks to what you said there about the totally unplayable compared to sometimes not quite lackluster. He said, as I say, he's one of 3 players to have a 9 more than once, but he said more 4s and 5s out of 10s than he's had 7s, which probably tells you something. And that's why he's actually risen by 1 place from the last ranking, so he is on the upward trend. That reflects it, but I think a lot of people would probably still think he should maybe have cracked the top 10. Likewise with the guy right above him, Carl Starfelt. Again, it's another rise. He's moved up, and I think the last time we done the ratings, that was when the perception of him was starting to change, that actually he's coming onto a game and all of that. And I think Alan Morrison done a piece on him over the weekend. It's worth a read. Basically asking did he owe him an apology because he was ready to write him off on the other podcast that he does. Really, really good analysis. He didn't quite agree that he owed him an apology. But it was good analysis and where he had improved, and a lot's made of his passing stats. And Alan rightly pointed out that, yeah, that's fine, but it's ultimately not where he's actually improved, because they both, Carter Vickers and Starfelt, need to be accurate with their passes, and it's not necessarily that makes him stand out. Alan made the point that it's actually getting better in the air and cutting out individual errors is where he's improved, and that's why it's such a perceptible improvement. He's moved up 1. Could he be in the top 10? He probably could. It was quite close, but again, there's new signings there that push people down, and that brings us to the top 10. And I think everybody would agree Matt O'Reilly's been a great signing since he's arrived. He's probably exceeded expectations in a way, and he's the first one in the top 10. So a word for him, Alison?
Yeah, I think he's been excellent. I think expectations were probably tempered when he first arrived, coming from a League One club. I'm not sure the anticipation would have been that he was coming straight in to a very strong Celtic midfield, but I think he announced his arrival very quickly. That performance at Tynecastle, then straight into the game against Rangers at Celtic Park. I think his return has been excellent. I think he looks like a very athletic footballer, a very Ange Postecoglou player, I think, in terms of his work rate and what he brings in an attacking sense. And I think what you can say is that the midfield area is probably the most competitive part of the team just now, given the players available. And I think you would have to say, you would definitely think that he deserves to be in
there. Number 9 there, probably causing a wee bit of consternation. It's not contrary to popular belief, because I give him a 10 out of 10 every week. But it's just the way that it's worked out. He's actually been pretty consistent, Greg Taylor. I would argue that his 2 best games have probably come in 2 of Celtic's biggest games, which is the League Cup final against Hibs and then the 3-0 dismantling of Rangers. Number 8, Anthony Ralston. I mean, what can we say that we've not said about him already? It's actually a drop of 2. He's actually switched places with Juranovic, which maybe is a microcosm of what has actually happened in the team for the bigger games. But I mean, Anthony Ralston, he's been superb, isn't he, Tony?
I think if you were giving it on a kind of merit basis alone, Anthony Ralston would be at the top, wouldn't he? But he's been a role model of consistency, and I'm not surprised to see Anthony Ralston where he is, and probably he could and probably should be higher. But it's testament to the season he's had. There's only 7 Celtic players above him, and that's quite that's quite an achievement for a player like Anthony Ralston, to be fair, this season.
I mean, his raw output, 7 assists and 5 goals, that winner against Ross County included, obviously. It's been a productive season in pretty much every way for Anthony Ralston. There's very little not positive about his season. Scotland dismissal aside, but it's I mean, there is no disputing. He's definitely top 10. I agree with Tony. I think it's dropping down 2 places is probably harsh, but again, it's that thing I keep coming back to, where the new entries, they've done so well, but also met the cut-off but not played as much, so you've not got as much time to kind of fall back as well. I think makes a difference. Number 7 is probably a case in point for that. Rail Hatate, guys here's asking why Maida's so far down. I'll tell you exactly why. Because think about it, Hatate's start, I mean, a 9 out of 10 player of the match against Hibs, his debut. The Howitzer game against Hearts was an 8 out of 10, and then 2 games after that, tormented Rangers with 2 goals, another 9 out of 10. He set that bar so high, and he's not had time to really dip down all that much, even with a couple of kind of mediocre performances. He just set that bar so high that his average rating keeps him up there. He catapulted himself right into the top 10 off the back of that kind of first 4 or 5 games that he had. Is it probably going to be that at the end of the season? Hopefully, because it means he'll have been consistently producing again. But that's why he's ended up 7th and almost touching the top 5. Number 6, Juranovic. Is anybody surprised? I thought he might have been top 5. I think your favourite Joe Hart maybe just kept him out there, Tony. But Juranovic, I mean, a word for him, Alison. That's I'd say he's grown into the season. His importance has grown as the season's grown. Would you agree with that?
I would, and he's another one that I think turns up for the big games. I thought he played particularly well in February when Celtic beat Rangers 3-0. I thought he was excellent. I think he gives a real attacking threat down that right-hand side. Like you, I thought you might have made your top 5. I thought you might have been in it, but yeah, I would agree. I think he's better on the right than he is on the left. Although he can play both, I think you get more out of him when he's on that right-hand side. And I think maybe if he'd been on the right-hand side for the duration of the season, you might have seen him going slightly higher up.
Right, number 5, Tony. Step forward. Your favourite, the man, Mr. Hart.
I mean, he doesn't have a lot to do in games sometimes, does he? and then he'll maybe just pop up with a save because his concentration levels are very high. Just experience. He's just given that defence a calmness, a reassuredness, at most part. But the one thing, and I did say because I wrote his wee blurb, was his tendency to come out his area and play daft passes and just give Celtic supporters the occasional moment. And I get that that's what they're being told to play, but Joe Hart kind of sometimes gives them cause for concern with that kind of stuff. But in terms of shot stopper and concentration levels, he's fine. Could he come out and command his 6-yard area better at cross balls and set pieces? Yeah, he probably could, but there's a reason why they've not conceded a lot of goals. He's part of that defence, the big picture there as well of the man that we'll get to in a minute.
Alison, do you think there's on Joe Hart? Do you think he benefits from the fact that he has gave a kind of calmness and assuredness to the back directly after the tenures of Barkas and Bain?
Yeah, definitely. I think he's a very experienced goalkeeper. I think he's played at the highest level. He has the temperament, clearly, to play at Celtic. I think he understands the demands of the club and embraced them rather than being intimidated by it. I think he's endeared himself to the supporters just by how he's conducted himself at times. And I think he's probably also benefited from Carter Vickers and Starfelt being such a consistent partnership in front of him. I think that helps goalkeepers when you're playing with a fairly settled back line too.
Yep, top four. I mean, Kyogo, he was top in the first one. He was second at the November update of these rankings. He's been injured pretty much consistently since, but obviously since then the League Cup final happened as well. His average rating has obviously stayed exactly the same because he's just not played that much. So it's more, to me, a credit to the people above him rather than anything else. I'm sure you would agree. If he comes back, there's a chance he could easily rise up these again. If he comes back for the last 7 games, the last 8 games, hopefully the last 9 games. But I don't know if there's much point in spending time talking about Kyogo because there's not much that you can add, I think, unless any of you have got anything you would like to say about him.
I think the only thing you would say is that if he does come back for the run-in, I think he gives Celtic a real considerable boost. I think he energises the players round about him. I think he very quickly took on talismanic qualities. I think he just brings a belief and assurance and energy. I think if he's fit and available for any part of the run-in, I think Celtic fans would be significantly optimistic about their chances of reclaiming the title.
Sean, I would be tempted to put him on the bench on Sunday, regardless of the fitness status.
For the fear factor?
Just for that kind of, yeah. But just, it might be going through the manager's mind. Because I said at the time as well, I thought Rangers missed a trick by not putting Aaron Ramsey on the bench in the game in February, regardless of the fact that they knew he probably wasn't going to play any part.
Mm-hmm.
No, just the whole part of the psychology and the mind games leading up to a game like that. But I would be tempted to stick Kyogo on the bench on Sunday just for the what if factor, even regardless of his fitness or lack of. Just the way I would think about it.
It's a consideration. Moving into the top 3, he was third the last time. He's remained third. Callum McGregor, the captain. Tony, we word about him.
Just captain, fantastic. He really is. He is the role model of consistency. I struggle to think of a bad game that Callum McGregor's played this season. He's always made a valid contribution, even in the games that European games as well. You always can rely on McGregor to at least try and do something. So you are running out of superlatives for McGregor because he really has taken to the armband. He really does lead by example. And the two that are in front of him, there's arguments for that for various different reasons. But yeah, for McGregor to be in the top 3, he was always going to be in your top 3. Should he be higher? Probably debatable. But the two in front of him, you have made a case and an argument for them. But McGregor to me has been, I think he'll be up there for like the player of the year this season, to be honest.
Might need to improve a wee bit to get our player of the year though. If he's to go by, but I agree with every word you said there. I've ended his wee summary on these rankings by quoting Kevin McKenna, our columnist, wrote about him earlier in the season, and I've ended it with this quote, which is Kevin McKenna talking about his dad, saying, "My dad always said that Bobby Murdoch made you feel serene and a little less anxious. I feel the same when Callum McGregor runs out to play for Celtic." Is there any better praise than that, Alison?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that sense of composure, the sense of assurance and just the unflustered element of his play. I think he very rarely gives the ball away. If you watch him, he's also so key just to linking that middle to front movement that it can be so aggressive in the way that Ange Postecoglou's side play and in how they set up. I think he really is pivotal to making that work. And I think maybe the other compliment you can give him is to say when he's not in the team, you really feel keenly his absence.
Yep. Speaking of not being in the team, last updates, number 1 spot, now second, Jota. A spell out injured, disrupted his rhythm, I would say. But I mean, his tangible contributions are still great. He's got 10 goals and 10 assists. And as I say, I like to look at the minutes equivalent rather than just the appearances in total. So he's got the 10 goals and 10 assists in the minutes equivalent of about 28 matches, which is just impressive. Even the underlying stats back it up, the eye test, everything about him. He's been impressive since he came. I liken him to an old-fashioned winger, not in the way that he wants to go outside and cross it, although he does like a cross, but just in the way that he almost takes it as a personal mission to make sure your bum never touches the seat when he's on the ball, that kind of thing. A word for him, Tony, because I think it's important to point out that he's second, but it was so tight that it was literally minutes played that put them into second. That was the only difference. They've got the same average rating. It's simply that the number 1 guy we're going to come to in a minute had sustained it and played a wee bit more. That was a tiebreaker.
Well, it's credit to Cameron Carter-Vickers because it's an unfashionable position that's leading the charts, isn't it? Because Jota's an entertainer, and the Celtic supporters love entertainers. And in the past while, since he came right back onto a game against Livingston, didn't he? Just kind of rediscovered his mojo, and he's been playing. But I mean, he's been playing very well for most part of the season. He was out injured, and it did, as you say, affect him slightly. But he's back on it, isn't he? Yeah, I agree with Andrew. And you know, this is a big test from now on Sunday. These are the places you need to, show up and bring your A game, and you feel safe that players like Jota can do that. And I think that's the thing. His contribution over the past while has been tremendous, and the 10 goals and 10 assists. And Celtic supporters are just desperate to see him sign a permanent deal, aren't they, at the end of the season, and so they can, or let us know what's happening so that Celtic can plan with or without him. But he would be a big loss. But he's a happy player, and it shows. And I think that if Celtic win the title and get into the Champions League group stages, I think that's the biggest thing that will entice him to sign.
Speaking of players that Celtic fans want to sign, number 1, I don't know what you think it says that the two top spots are 2 loanees, but we'll come to that on a different day maybe. But number 1, Cameron Carter-Vickers. Alison, are you surprised that he's nicked the top spot? He was 4th the last time. Is it a surprise to you?
Yes and no. I think no, because I think he's been very stable, very consistent. I think he's performed well. I think, again, another who has brought a calmness to that back line, a bit of composure to it. On the other hand, surprised because he's not one to hog the headlines. It's like you don't tend to come away from games raving about what he's done. He tends to be overshadowed by the guys who are scoring goals or creating goals. But no, I think he's been an excellent signing this season. Whether or not Celtic will keep him on a full-time permanent basis, I'm not so sure. I think there'll be real competition, and I think some of the finances that come from south of the border, I think, we live in the real world. So I think it might just be figures that Celtic can't live with, can't compete with in a realistic basis. So it'll be interesting to see what comes next for him, but certainly I think it was a very positive partnership for both the player and for the club this season.
Tony, I've mentioned to you before it when I was going through my spreadsheet that I didn't realise just quite how many 8 out of 10 performances that Carter Vickers has had throughout the season. But what stood out to me was he ended the last update was the last international break, so it was away back in November, and he signed off for that, having moved up to 4th, and it was 3 8s and a 7 just before they broke up for the international break. Now he came back from that, and he went through a 16-game stretch. Now 16 games, it's a small sample size in terms of the season, but not really when you consider the context of 16 basically 90-minute games, because he never really comes off. So that takes you up to the Bodo Glimt first leg, which was obviously a different story entirely. But the 16 games for the minute that he came back from the international break the last time, had 8 out of 10s, 7 out of 10s, and 1 6 out of 10, which was at 0-0 against St Mirren. Across the whole season, he's had an 8 out of 10 more often than he has any other score. So a word on Carter Vickers to end our Power Rankings episode, Tony, if you will.
That kind of says it all, doesn't it? You are entering the realms of Cameron Carter Vickers 8, aren't you? That's his name. You know what I mean? So that's the moniker that he's taken on, because he's very rarely flustered. He's composed, he's calm, he's assured. The Celtic supporters, Alan said, whatever happens, it's been a brilliant partnership this season in terms of him coming in on loan and improving his lot and football-wise. But he looks settled, he looks happy. And again, another that might come down to the fact whatever competition Celtic are playing in, or simply finances, if someone can offer him a better deal. But you tend to think that you hope that these guys get bitten by the Celtic bug and they enjoy their surroundings and they're kind of here for the duration with the manager as well. You can't underemphasise the part the manager will play in trying to get him to sign. But as the manager said, you either want to sign or you don't. And I guess that's that's what happened at the end of the season with Cameron Carter Vickers and Jota. But he's played more football at Celtic than anywhere else he's been on loan.
Yeah. And
he's looked to have enjoyed it. And it's manifested itself in our rankings, and it's also manifesting itself in the fact that he's a bit of a fan's favourite, isn't he? Celtic fans really love him.
Yep.
And he would leave a massive, massive hole in the team if he were to depart. And for the money that they're talking, £6.5 million for him, £6 million. Potentially, I think that'd be a good bit of business if Celtic can secure that. And the player will know that he's playing for a team that are seriously trying to win trophies and also want to compete and try and be a force in Europe. He's not going to get that at a lot of other places. He might get financially recompensed, but it depends what motivates you in football and life, doesn't it? Is it money, or is it to actually compete and win things and play at the highest level? He's got a chance to do that at Celtic.
As I say, Carter Vickers, our standout defender and the standout on our list today. I think we should end with this from Pete McGee, just to remember this is all a very positive space, unlike the Oscars. There's no threat of physical violence against any of the panellists today. So let's all agree this is very subjective. Of course it is. There might be a couple of sums going into getting the ratings, but it is all detailed player ratings that we've taken it from. It's all very subjective. And Ange, I think that's a fair comment. Ange has been the kind of key to it all, the standout really of the season. As I always say, if you enjoy this kind of thing, you'll probably enjoy the website, and the full explanations for just how, for instance, James McCarthy made it above the ladder there on the ratings are all on the website. So if you can log on, subscribe if you've not already to give us a wee go, celticway.co.uk/subscribe, and let us know what you think. Leave comments on the articles, all that. We do read them. We appreciate them. But thanks again for joining us today. Thanks, Tony. Thanks, Alison. And thanks to the graphic for not malfunctioning while I was trying to get it up. We'll see you all tomorrow when we ramp up the Glasgow Derby coverage for the rest of the week.
Thank you.
Cheers, Sean.